Welcome to the January 2025 Workforce and Higher Ed Policy Committee meeting for Ellevate Louisiana. Today, we will be hearing from Secretary Susie Schowen about the Workforce Commission priorities for 2025. Secretary Schowen was on Ellevate's Board of Directors prior to being selected to serve as the Workforce Commission Secretary in January of 2025. Prior to that, she served in workforce and economic development roles with both LCTCS and LED Fast Start, and has just been a great friend and to all of us here at Ellevate. And we're just so excited that she's A, in this role, and B, here to share her priorities with us today. So hello, Secretary.
Thank you very much, Julie, for the introduction. And I think most people here know I go by Susie, but I certainly am happy to answer to that. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm really glad to be in the position that Julie mentioned. So I came in with Governor Landry's administration almost exactly a year ago, January 8th last year, I came into this position, and it's really just been a joy. Serving the people of Louisiana is the best thing that I could ask to be able to do. I have a whole lot more slides for you than I actually need. So I'm just sort of letting everybody know that I'm going to be, zipping through some of them, but I'll share them with Julie so that she can share them with people afterwards. So some of them will more or less be informational only. But what I'd like to do with everybody here is talk about the strategic plan for our agency and where we're planning to go. That's not going to make any sense unless you know where we are now. And so I do want to give people a little overview of the Workforce Commission itself and of the workforce system as it's built in Louisiana and at the federal level as well. It's pretty complicated. I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to give everybody enlightenment on every aspect of it, but I do want to give you some overall context because, again, I think that that's something that not everybody is fully conversant with. I am going to say a couple of words about myself. I was a board member of Ellevate very proudly and have been a member for quite a while. Really support the work of this excellent group of smart women thinking about hard issues. I love it. Prior to taking this role, I was the vice president of education at the Louisiana Community and Technical College System, or LCTCS, which is the public two-year college system for the state of Louisiana, although I do want to recognize two of our public two-year colleges that are not part of the system, and that's LSU Eunice and Southern University at Shreveport, sister colleges of LCTCS. Prior to that, I was with Louisiana Economic Development for more than 10 years, and I was with LED Fast Start, which is the workforce development division of LED, and really do still consider myself an economic developer. And I'm approaching the question of workforce development from an economic development standpoint. So I'm going to start with a conversation about that. And I've been using this slide for, 12 or 15 years now. It's in every single presentation that I give. And if I leave it out, people notice and they comment on that. This slide illustrates workforce development from a economic development perspective. So if we focus here, the important arrow is kind of the gray arrow to the top right that shows the economic driver occupations. So the idea is that some occupations matter more to economic growth than others. And so we need to, from a strategic point of view, identify the types of workforce development that are going to make the most difference to economic growth. And that's what this slide illustrates. Economic driver industries or economic driver jobs can be defined in 100 different ways. What we're really focused on here is industries that produce things of value that are sold outside of the industry, or sorry, that are sold outside of the region, so that you're growing the amount of wealth within the region, rather than just circulating the wealth that stays there. So things like manufacturing, software development, and so on are pretty classic examples. Those are things that can be sold anywhere. And again, the revenues can grow within the region in which they exist. And then there are certain jobs that the economic driver industries hire for that are going to matter more to their growth potential within a certain community than others. And as an example, if we think about the deal of the year, the really big meta project going on up in Richland Parish, there is a multi-billion-dollar AI data center going in up there, and they're going to need somebody to run that data center. The likelihood is that they're not going to hire that person out of Richland Parish. There will probably be somebody from within the Meta organization that takes that role. There will likely be other people in leadership roles who take that job, but they're going to need a whole lot of engineers. They're going to need a whole lot of electricians. They are going to need a lot of electricians. And they're going to need to be able to get people like that, like the bread and butter workers from the community in which they live. And that's the green arrow that we're talking about here. So if we can provide to our economic driver industries the type of workforce that is going to allow them to grow and thrive in Louisiana, then we start to see this positive cycle of growth. And that positive cycle of growth includes the need to support that growth and support the quality of life in our communities by producing enough workers in fields like education and healthcare. If we're not able to keep up with this momentum by making sure that we're producing enough of those workers, then we're going to have a great deal of trouble. However, we also see a growth in revenues, right? Because we're growing the wealth in the community, and you start to see the consequences of that. You've got your communities investing in museums and parks. You've got philanthropy. You've got things like that. And all of a sudden, we've got the kind of thriving community that provides a diverse set of options to our young people. And this is where our arts and humanities majors are able to find jobs in the fields that they love. So I am often accused of only caring about computer scientists and welders because they sit squarely within that green arrow of the workforce, the skilled workforce needs for our economic driver industries. But the truth is, I care about everybody, but we don't get to the economy that we need to have, that we want to have, unless we have enough welders and computer scientists. So that's really the focus of the message that I want to deliver there. So very briefly, I just want to describe the workforce system in Louisiana. So obviously, we are the Louisiana Workforce Commission. We are the entity that sits within the Department of Labor oversight at the federal level, and we receive our funding through the Department of Labor for the most part, with a few exceptions, through funding authorized through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I am going to put a bug in everybody's ear that WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, is up for reauthorization right at this moment. So with Senator Cassidy coming in as the chair of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, this is sitting squarely in his wheelhouse. And we have great hopes that a bipartisan deal that was crafted together in the last Congress can move forward, and possibly even with some further priorities of ours addressed. But the current legislation, the agreement that they're looking at, would be extraordinarily beneficial for Louisiana in particular and for our agency, and would provide some significant opportunities to advance some of the goals that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So our funding comes from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and we get generally several tens of millions of dollars through that mechanism down from the federal government that comes to my agency and then goes right back out the doors. So we distribute that money to a set of 15 local areas. And these are the American Job Centers, your workforce development boards that I know many of you are very familiar with. Each one of them has a different brand, which is a little bit complicated. And honestly, the overall system is fairly complicated. But these funds are distributed to these 15 local areas based on formula. And it's based on unemployment rate. So we are expecting a more constrained set of resources in the coming year than we've had in previous years due to the very low unemployment rates that we're experiencing now. We have a state level board, which is the Workforce Investment Council, and that's really my advisory board. We have an amazing group of members. I'm so excited about the work of the WEC coming up. And then I really just want to say, like, this is the federal workforce system and sort of the state workforce system, but it is not the whole workforce system. So we have our partners across the board that we like to call the workforce ecosystems. And these are partners in education, community foundations, very importantly, our economic development organizations and so on, that we really, as an agency, need to be developing far closer relationships with. And we're really looking forward to the level of collaboration that we're seeing at both the state level and the local and regional level. This is what we do as the Workforce Commission. I think most of what we do, people often think of as sitting within the first two offices that we have here, the Office of Workforce Development and the Office of Occupational Information. We're in the process of consolidating these two units because the Office of Occupational Information is really providing the data that gives a foundation to the work of the Office of Workforce Development. So it makes sense to consolidate those. And then we also have the Office of Workers' Compensation and the Office of Unemployment Insurance. I'm sure that nobody on this call has had a disquieting experience with any of those offices. But if by chance you might have, I can assure you we've got some really exciting things going on. We've got some terrific leaders in each of these offices, and we're working really hard on a number of initiatives to improve the way that we're able to deliver services to all of our citizens. So we hope that you will see gratifying change, and I'm always willing to open my door and solicit good feedback from all of you on how we can be better. But now I want to get to the important part of the conversation, which is where are we going, right? What are our goals? What are our strategic priorities as the LWC? So we've been working with CSRS, which is an organization that some of you are familiar with, on a strategic planning initiative. And we've identified 3 primary goals at the state level. And we're now in the process of extending those down through the offices and through all of our state level people. So everybody's got a clear eye on how their work aligns with these goals. The first goal is business workforce solutions. In the last regular session of the Louisiana legislature, and I know we've had a million of them, but there was a regular session in 2024. And in that session, we passed a bill that became Act 330. And I want to thank Adam Knapp with what was then the Committee of 100 and is now Leaders for a Better Louisiana for his help in crafting Act 330. That put, for the first time in either state or federal legislation, the ownership of business workforce solutions. Generally speaking, that workforce system that I just talked about is about working with individuals and putting them into a job. It's not about working with businesses and helping them find the full sphere of workers that they need in order to thrive as a business. So we are currently building out an infrastructure, and I hope to have some news very soon on a really significant funding source that will help us to really kick this into high gear. But I can't spoiler it right this second. But Business Workforce Solutions is about working directly with our business partners. And I kind of want to say we always talk about workforce development as if it's training and education, sometimes when we're talking a little more broadly, but we almost always end up talking about new entrants to the workforce. And it's incredibly important that our businesses have support and have strategies and infrastructure to help them with the rest of their workforce needs. If you look at hiring at any given business, by far the majority of those open positions are looking for people with existing skills and experience, people who have been in the workforce for quite a while. We need to do a much better job of connecting businesses with those kind of workers. And we need to do a much better job of connecting experienced and sophisticated workers with jobs in Louisiana. If you look at the way that our our one-stop shops, our American Job Centers work, typically it is focused on people that are making a job change or looking for their first real job. We don't do a good job with those outfits in general, with some exceptions, of helping people in the middle of their career who are really solidly on a great career trajectory find that next place. We really expect them to do that by themselves. We also do need to recognize that there's a need for a fairly sophisticated skill set, and we're partnering with LED, excuse me, to make sure we're able to support that. And then we have a very important goal in terms of supporting upward mobility in the American dream. I am going to get into this in just a moment because I've got some dedicated slides that explain what we're trying to do there. And then finally, educational alignment is about making sure that we are supporting the aspirations of our young people for the future, making sure that our educational systems are ensuring that people have the kind of opportunities after graduation that we want them to. So sometimes we express the upward mobility part of our goal as moving people from dependence to independence. And the educational alignment piece is about making sure that education leads to a vocation. And Governor Landry really likes to throw those into his talking points as well. These are not just our priorities, but his priorities. So I mentioned the need for business workforce solutions to focus on the whole spectrum of workforce demands. I've outlined what I just talked about a minute ago, but with the recognition that there are a whole lot of partners that have sort of been pulled into our workforce ecosystems, particularly on the new entrants to the workforce side. But we need to start working on building out and really supporting the infrastructure on the need to hire skilled and experienced people and highly experienced and like niche workers who really have unusual skill sets. We're working on strategies to build out those strengths. I'm going to now start talking about the upward mobility and the American dream. Because I've been talking about business workforce solutions and the need to support our employers. And of course, I started out by talking about economic driver employers and so on. We need to recognize that our employers are really struggling right now. And I think if you talk to anybody that's hiring anybody, probably most, if not all of you on the call, are struggling to find the kind of workers that are going to take your enterprise to the next level. I know I'm struggling with some hiring needs myself right now. And I just want to say really quickly, that's the situation right now. But we have so many jobs about to come to Louisiana. And I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but the majority of those jobs are in the skilled trades. We've got billions of dollars of capital investment coming into the state. We've got that Meta deal, the deal of the year, the platinum deal of the year. We are so proud of LED and our governor for bringing that in. Fabulous work. But they are going to need thousands of construction workers and electricians to build and maintain that data center. And the skilled trades could not be more important to our state's future. And we have to do a better job when we get to the educational alignment space of communicating that adequately to our young people and to their parents. But at the same time that we've got these extraordinary opportunities and yet more opportunities coming to Louisiana, and we have a very low unemployment rate, we still have a very high poverty state. And we've got a lot of people that are not working. And the question is, how do we have those two things at the same time? And that's where our work here is really focused. So very briefly, our unemployment rate right now is 4.3%. We had about 90,000 unemployed people in the past month. That's about typical. And then we come very close to leading the nation in the number of job openings per capita. So we've got a huge number of opportunities out there, but we've got very few people to take them. I'm going to very briefly explain labor force participation rate on this next slide. It is different from unemployment rates. Unemployment rates take the number of people currently looking for work and divide that by the number of people working. If you take those two numbers, the number of people looking for work plus the number of people working, add them up, that's the labor force. And you can see in our little fraction here, that's the labor force, that's the top number. If you divide that by the adult population in Louisiana, you get this number at the bottom right on my slide here. 58.4% of our people are either looking for work or actively working. And this is the adult population. But if you look at our rankings on the same calculation across the nation and the District of Columbia, we're about 8th from the bottom. The short story is 40% of our people are sitting on the sidelines of our economy. And that's how we end up in a situation where we've got an extraordinary number of job openings and nobody to fill them, and a whole lot of poverty, a whole lot of misery. If we can address this, if we can help people get to work, we change Louisiana. We lower crime rates, we improve education outcomes, we improve health outcomes. This is where the magic happens. But we've got to understand why our people are not in the labor force and what's getting in their way, and then how we help them overcome those challenges. People often ask, who are these people and how do we talk to them? And the answer is we talk to them all the time, every day. They are typically receiving social benefits in one way or another. They're receiving Medicaid, they're receiving SNAP, which is food stamps, TANF, which is what we think of as traditional welfare. And all of those pieces of the system provide some sort of assistance that is supposed to help people get to work, but it doesn't really function that way. And this is why, because we're making people walk through a bunch of different doors, often in different parishes, almost always in different buildings. You get your Medicaid over here, you get your food stamps over there. And if they're receiving benefits that, if they're receiving services that are intended to help them get to work, we just sort of tell them, okay, we're going to pick up your childcare, now go get a job, right? That's not very helpful. And the workforce system is supposed to be helping people with that. But we're not tying these services into a plan for people with self-sufficiency and employment at the end. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about moving people from dependence to independence. The obstacles in their way are generally things like childcare, transportation, and minor disabilities. These are things that are preventing people from getting to training and getting to work. And candidly, the way the system is built like this, I don't truly believe that it was done on purpose, but it looks purpose built to keep people in poverty. We need to straighten that out. At the same token, we've got that same complicated picture for employers. We're looking at business workforce solutions, but where are they supposed to go? We need a one-door system, and that's what we're talking about. I will tell all of you that we've got some extraordinary opportunities coming right now. We will be introducing legislation. I can't tell you about it quite yet, but I promise I will come and tell you about it when I can. But we do have a workforce and social services reform task force, which started its work about a year ago. And its final report with a series of really bold recommendations on how we move Louisiana closer to the one-door model is coming out on Friday. So keep an eye out, and Julie, I'll make sure to share that with you. But moving forward with this strategic goal is just the joy of my life. I mean, we're tackling generational poverty head on, and it's a great moment for Louisiana. And then I briefly mentioned educational alignment, which is stopping the problem before it happens, right? If we're able to support our young people in graduating from school with backgrounds and experience that are relevant to the workforce, then we're going to solve this problem before it happens and build a better Louisiana for the future. So we're working with the K-12 system really intensively on their new accountability system, which I understand is not universally popular. And I've had a number of conversations with several of you on this call about that. And I really do understand that. But there are a couple of parts of it that I'm just so enthusiastic about, particularly increased career and technical education and the opportunity for internships. Young people who have that opportunity to be part of the world of work and start to build relationships with the world of work are so much more likely to be part of the labor force once they leave their educational institution that they're in right now. So I'm going to, the remaining slides, which I had sort of threatened to zip through, are really just a few more details on how we're modernizing the agency. I'm not going to run through those right now. What I would like to do right now is wrap up.
Well, I just want to first thank you so much for being here. I think that it was when I first saw Susie's slides, not the exact same ones, but a few years ago.
There are some that are the exact
There were
same
the
ones.
first one specifically. You're right. But when I first saw those slides, I just knew we had an extremely talented person on our hands, and I worked to make sure she got on our board of directors, and was just thrilled when she was selected to be Workforce Commission Secretary. So we're really just proud of you and excited to learn from you. So for all of you listening, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. If you're interested in these types of policy talks, check us out on Ellevate Louisiana's website, where you can learn more about our policy committees, our advocacy efforts, and how to join. That website is ELLEVATELA.org. That's Ellevate with 2 L's. And we hope to see you again on this video podcast series, as we're really excited about kicking it off again this year. Thanks a lot. Y'all have a great day.